The rescue made news across consortium space. A ship declared unsalvageable by 3 species of expert engineers, awakened by a human mechanic, and flown in a desperate rescue mission. The story spread from station to station and world to world. People called it miraculous and impossible and legendary. Yuna did not feel legendary. She felt tired and worried and protective of the ship that had given everything to save 93 strangers. The Morning Star needed extensive repairs and the station engineering teams worked around the clock to fix the damage from the rescue mission. Yuna stayed aboard the entire time, watching and supervising and making sure no one did anything that might upset the ship. The ship tolerated the repair crews because Yuna asked it to, but it made clear that it did not trust them. It only responded to commands from Unate. Only opened doors for people she approved. It had chosen its crew, and everyone else was just a visitor. Attention brought complications that Yuna had not anticipated. Commander Veth arrived with a formal proposal from the consortium military. The Morning Star has proven its capabilities, the commander said. The consortium wishes to acquire the vessel for military service. Yuna shook her head. The ship is not for sale, Commander. Veth smiled in a way that showed all of her sharp teeth. Everything has a price, human, and we are prepared to be generous. You do not understand. Yuna replied, the ship is not mine to sell, and it does not want to be a military vessel. The Kethrai sent their own delegation. They wanted the Morning Star returned to their people as a cultural artifact. This ship represents a part of our history that we tried to forget. A Kethrai ambassador explained, we wish to preserve it as a reminder of what we lost. Yuna appreciated the sentiment, but she knew the ship did not want to spend its remaining years in a museum. The station administrators calculated auction values and sent her offers that would have paid off her debts 1,000 times over. Collectors and researchers and wealthy enthusiasts contacted her with proposals and promises and bribes. Everyone wanted something from the Morning Star. No one asked what. The ship wanted. A consortium legal team eventually arrived to discuss what they called the disposition of the asset. They had documents and arguments and precedents prepared. They expected Yuna to cooperate because she was just a mechanic with debts and no real power. The Morning Star had other ideas. When the legal team came aboard without Yuna present, the ship refused to acknowledge them. Lights shut off in the corridors. They walked through doors sealed in front of them. The temperature dropped until they could see their breath. They left quickly and did not return. Elder Sonath helped resolve the legal situation with knowledge that everyone else had forgotten. Under original Kethrai law, a bonded ship and its crew are considered a single legal entity. The elder explained to the frustrated legal team. This law was never formally replaced when we joined the consortium. The lawyers argued that ancient Kethrai law could not apply to a human elder. Sonath smiled. The law does not specify the species of the crew. The elder replied, it only requires that a bond exists, and the bond between Unibeak and the Morning Star is beyond question. The legal challenges eventually faded away. The consortium could not acquire what was not property. The Kethrai could not reclaim what had chosen a new family. The station could not sell what refused to be sold. Yuna was offered positions by military commanders and research institutions and wealthy collectors. They wanted her expertise and her connection to the legendary vessel. She turned them all down. Jakal formally requested to join the Morning Star as junior engineer. He had changed during the months of working with Yunath. Logical Torvasi had learned that some things could not be measured or analyzed. Some things simply had to be felt. Yuna welcomed him aboard. Elder Sonath asked to remain as a passenger for a time. The old Kethrai wanted to learn what the ship remembered of their history. They wanted to understand what their people had truly lost when they abandoned their old ways. The Morning Star agreed. It showed Elder Sonath memories from its storage banks, images of star systems it had visited, and crews it had carried, and missions it had completed. Elder spent hours watching these records with tears streaming down their weathered face. "Thank you," Elder Soneth said to both Yuna and the ship. "Thank you for giving us back a piece of ourselves." The Morning Star, prepared for its first official contract, was a routine supply run to a frontier colony, nothing legendary about it. Just cargo that needed to be delivered and people who needed supplicity. Yuna sat in the command center as the ship undocked from Talvari Station. Jikal monitored the systems with his usual precision. Elder Soneth watched from an observation seat with ancient eyes full of wonder. The ship hummed around them with contentment. It had purpose again. It had a crew again. It was no longer alone. Yuna placed her hands on the control interface and felt the ship respond to her touch. "Ready?" she asked. The ship answered with a feeling rather than words, excitement and anticipation and joy. It was ready. They launched into open space, and the stars spread out before them like an infinite ocean of possibilities. The Morning Star had been abandoned and forgotten and declared beyond saving. 3 species had given up on it. But a human mechanic had seen something worth saving. She had offered kindness instead of force. She had offered patience instead of demands. She had offered partnership instead of ownership, and in return she had received something beyond price: a ship that would never abandon her, a home among the stars, a friend for life. Years later, a consortium engineering textbook included a new chapter. It was titled The Beak Protocols, and it described standard procedures for approaching dormant or unresponsive vessels. The procedures emphasize patience and communication and treating ships as potential partners rather than problems. A footnote: the chapter mentioned that the Morning Star remained in active service. It was still flying with its original human mechanic. It was still answering to no one else. It was still proving every day that some things are only impossible until someone cares enough to try. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the Morning Star carried its crew toward their next destination. It was not doing anything legendary. It was just doing the work that mattered, and that was more. The emergency alert came in the middle of the station night cycle. A mining vessel called the Bright Fortune had suffered catastrophic engine failure in the nearby asteroid field. Its orbit was decaying rapidly, and it would crash into an asteroid. Within 6 hours, 93 workers were aboard, and none of the stations available. Ships had enough power to tow it to safety in time. Yuna was in the Morning Star when the alert reached her. She felt the ship react to the news with a surge of energy through its systems. It understood what was happening. It understood that people needed help. Commander Veth contacted Yuna directly through the station communication system. The Morning Star is the only vessel with enough power to reach the mining ship and tow it back, the commander said. "You need to deploy immediately." Elder Sana's voice cut in on the same channel. "The ship has not been tested," the elder protested. "The bond is not complete, and pushing it now could harm both the vessel and its pilot." Commander Veth was not interested in arguments. 93 lives are at stake, she said coldly. That takes priority over concerns about emotional damage to a machine. Yuna listened to them argue, and she looked at the walls around her. The Morning Star was vibrating with tension. It could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on both of them. "What do you want to do?" Yuna asked quietly. The ship did not respond with words. Instead, it sent her a feeling. Fear was there, and uncertainty, and worry about failure. But underneath all of that was something stronger. Longing. The Morning Star wanted to fly again. It wanted to matter again. It wanted to prove that it was not just a broken relic from a forgotten age. Yuna made her decision. "We are going," she announced over the communication channel. "Elder Sanath, I understand the risks, but we cannot let those people die when we have the power to help them." The elder was silent for a moment. "Then I will pray for both of you," Elder Sanath said finally. "May you find strength in each other." Jikal arrived at the ship running with all 4 arms pumping at his sides. "I am coming with you," he declared. "You need someone to monitor the systems while you fly." Yuna did not argue. She was grateful for the help and for the company. They strapped themselves into the command center seats, and Yuna placed her hands on the main control interface. The ship responded immediately. Power surged through systems that had been dormant for decades. The engines began to warm up with a sound like distant thunder. Telvari Station, this is the Morning Star requesting departure clearance. Yuna said. There was a moment of silence before the response came. Morning Star, this is Telvari Station Control, and you are cleared for departure. A voice said with obvious amazement. Good luck out there. The ship launched. The transition from station docking to open space was rougher than Yuna expected. Systems that had seemed functional under station power struggled under the demands of actual flight. Warning indicators lit up across the control boards. Hull stress readings spiked. The engines ran hot. Yuna talked the ship through each problem as it arose. Easy now, she said. We are just getting used to this, and there is no need to push too hard. The ship steadied itself in response to her voice. The warnings decreased, and the systems found their rhythm. Jikol monitored everything with his large eyes, darting from display to display. This is remarkable, he said. The ship is actively compensating for its own weaknesses. It wants to succeed. Yuna explained. It wants to prove that it can still do this. They reached the Bright Fortune with less than an hour to spare. The mining vessel was tumbling slowly toward a massive asteroid, and its crew had gathered at the observation ports to watch death approaching. Yuna guided the Morning Star into position and extended the towing connections. Bright Fortune, this is the Morning Star, she announced. Prepare for towing operations. The connection locked into place, and Yuna felt the ship brace itself for the strain. Here we go, she whispered. She activated the engines at full power. The Morning Star groaned ancient hull plates. Protested against forces they had not experienced in 4 decades. Warning indicators exploded across every display. Stress readings exceeded every safety parameter. Jikol made a sound of alarm. The hull integrity is dropping, he reported. We are exceeding operational limits. Yuna knew. She could feel the ship straining around her, but she could also feel something else. Determination. The Morning Star was not going to fail. Not this time. Not when lives depended on it. Hold together, Yuna said. I know it hurts, and I know it is hard, but we can do this. The ship responded with a surge of power that should have been impossible. The engines burned hotter. The hull plates held. Towing operation continued, minute by minute. The Morning Star dragged the Bright Fortune away from the asteroid. The distance increased slowly at first, and then faster as they built momentum. Yuna kept talking the whole time. She encouraged the ship and praised its strength and promised that they were almost done. The ship held itself together through sheer will. Finally, they reached safe distance. The Bright Fortune was stable, and its crew was sending messages of gratitude over every available channel. Yuna allowed herself to breathe. We did it, she said. We actually did it. The Morning Star hummed around her with exhausted pride. The journey back to Telvari Station was difficult. The ship was damaged in dozens of small ways. It trailed sparks and vented atmosphere from multiple minor breaches. The engines ran rough, and the hull creaked with every movement. But it flew under its own power. It answered Yuna's commands. It brought them home. Repair crews were waiting when they docked. They swarmed over the ship with tools and equipment, ready to fix the damage. But before any of them could begin, the Morning Star did something unexpected. It broadcast a message to the entire station. The message appeared on every display and played through every speaker. Crew, Unibeak. The message said, Status, home. The station fell silent. Everyone who heard the message understood what it meant. The Morning Star had chosen its crew. After 40 years of abandonment and grief and loneliness, it had found someone worthy of its trust, and it was never going to let her go. News traveled fast on Telvari Station. Within days, everyone knew that the human mechanic had somehow awakened. The Morning Star Counselor Dreth came to see for himself, and Una watched his reaction carefully. The Valkyrie supervisor stood in the middle of the command center with his long neck swaying back and forth as he looked around at the active displays and the working lights and the comfortable temperature. "This is impossible," he said. "3 teams declared this ship unsalvageable." Una shrugged and tried to look casual, even though her heart was pounding. Maybe they were wrong. Dreth turned to look at her with his large golden eyes. "What did you do?" he demanded. "What technique did you use?" "I talked to it," Una said. "I treated it like something worth saving instead of something broken." Dreth made a sound that her translator could not interpret, but she was pretty sure it meant something like disbelief or frustration. He left without saying anything else, but the attention did not stop. A consortium military attaché named Commander Veth arrived. 3 days later, she was a Hurth with dark scales and sharp teeth, and an attitude that made it clear she was used to getting what she wanted. "The consortium is interested in this vessel," Commander Veth announced. "A functional HFY heavy cruiser would be a significant military asset." Una felt the ship react to the words. The lights dimmed slightly, and the temperature dropped a few degrees. The Morning Star did not like Commander Veth. "The ship is not ready for military assessment," Una said carefully. "It is still recovering." Commander Veth laughed. "Recovering," she repeated. "It is a machine, not a patient in a medical ward." "With respect, Commander, you are wrong about that." The argument might have continued, but then someone else arrived. Elder Soneth of the Kethri came to Telvari Station specifically to see the Morning Star. The Elder was old even by Kethri standards, with faded blue scales and eyes that had seen centuries of history. When Elder Soneth stepped aboard the ship, the Morning Star reacted in ways Una had never seen. Before every light in the vessel brightened, the air filled with a soft humming sound displays throughout. The ship activated, showing images that Una did not recognize. Elder Soneth stood still for a long moment with tears streaming down their weathered face. "I never thought I would feel this again," the Elder said quietly. "The old ships were supposed to be gone forever." Una watched as Elder Soneth walked slowly through the corridors, touching walls and panels with obvious reverence. "We abandoned them," the Elder said. "We told ourselves it was necessary for progress, but we abandoned our partners and we never looked back." "Why?" Una asked. "Why would you leave ships that were so connected to you?" Elder Soneth sighed heavily. "The consortium required standardization for membership, and our old technology did not fit their standards," the Elder explained. "We were told that biological ships were inefficient and unreliable, and we believed them because we wanted to belong." The Elder paused in front of a display showing a star map. "We thought the old ships would simply fade away without their crews, but we were wrong." Elder Soneth continued. "They did not fade away, and they did not stop feeling, and they suffered alone while we pretended they never existed." Una felt the ship responding to the Elder's words. The humming changed to something that sounded almost like forgiveness. "The Morning Star remembers you," Una said. Elder Soneth nodded slowly. "And I remember it, and I'm so deeply sorry for what we did." The complications multiplied quickly. After that, Commander Veth wanted to run combat capability assessments. Immediately, Counselor Dreth wanted to accelerate the awakening process so the station could profit. From the newly valuable ship, various consortium officials sent messages, demanding reports and updates and access. Only Elder Soneth seemed to understand that the ship could not be rushed. The bond between a Kethri ship and its crew takes years to fully develop, the Elder warned. Forcing the process could damage both the ship and the human. Commander Veth did not care about warnings. She assembled an assessment team and approached the Morning Star without waiting for Yuna. The ship responded by sealing every airlock and refusing to open them. Commander Veth stood outside the main entrance, pounding on the hull and demanding entry inside the ship. Yuna smiled. Good job, she whispered to the walls around her. You do not have to let anyone in that you do not want to let in. The ship hummed happily in response. Commander Veth was furious, but there was nothing she could do. The Morning Star had made its choice about who it would accept, and no amount of military authority could change that. Later that night, Yuna sat alone in the command center, going over the day's events in her mind. The attention was overwhelming, and she was not sure how to handle it. She had never wanted to be famous or important. She just wanted to help the ship. The main display flickered and changed. New symbols appeared, and Yuna waited for her translator to interpret them. But this time, the ship did something different. It spoke through the newly activated speaker system. The voice was soft and uncertain, like someone speaking for the first time in decades. It spoke in the Kethray language, but the translator caught the words. I remember flying, the ship said. I remember the stars and the crew and the missions, and I remember what it felt like to matter. Yuna pressed her hands against the display. You still matter, she said. You matter to me. The ship was quiet for a long moment. Will you help me fly again? It asked. Yuna smiled through her tears. Yes, she promised. Whatever it takes. 2 weeks passed, and Yuna spent every shift aboard the Morning Star Counselor. Dreth sent her messages asking about the salvage assessment, and she kept telling him she needed more time. She was not lying exactly, because she was assessing the ship. She was just not planning to recommend breaking it apart. The Morning Star was waking up slowly, like someone rising from a very long sleep. Each day brought small changes that Yuna noticed and celebrated. A corridor that had been dark for 40 years would light up when she walked through it. A door that had been sealed would open after she spent time working nearby. The environmental systems activated in the section where she ate her lunch every day. The ship was learning her patterns and responding to them. Yuna kept talking to it constantly. She told it about her life on the colony world, where she grew up fixing machines that everyone else had given up on. She told it about the debt she had accumulated just to get passage to the core systems. She told it about her dreams of someday owning her own ship and being free to go wherever she wanted. The Morning Star listened. She could feel it listening, even though it could not respond with words. It responded in other ways. The temperature in her workspace became comfortable. The lighting adjusted to levels that did not strain her eyes. The panel opened one day to reveal a small compartment that was perfect for storing her tools. The ship was taking care of her. Yuna researched everything she could find about Kethray ship design and technology. The information was limited because the Kethray did not like to talk about their old ways. They had worked hard to integrate into consortium society, and they preferred to forget the ships they had abandoned. But she found enough to understand what she was dealing with. The resonance core at the heart of every Kethray ship was not just a computer. It was grown from biological material, and it developed something like consciousness over time. The core bonded with the crew through years of shared experience, and the bond went both ways. The crew came to understand the ship instinctively, and the ship came to anticipate the needs of its crew. When the Kethray left their old ships, the cores did not simply shut down. They grieved. The Morning Star had spent 40 years in grief. And then strangers had come aboard and tried to force it to respond. They had poked and prodded and cut into its systems. They had treated it like a broken machine rather than a wounded being. No wonder it had shut down. No wonder it had been called hostile. A young Torvasi engineer named Jiko became curious about what Yuna was doing. The Torvasi were a species known for their analytical minds and their dedication to efficiency. Jiko had 4 arms and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors, and a personality that was all questions and no patience, he started following Yuna to the Morning Star and watching her work. At first, Yuna found him annoying, but she came to appreciate his genuine curiosity. One day, Jiko asked her directly what she was trying to accomplish. Yuna explained her theory about the resonance core and the bond it needed. Jiko was skeptical. "This is not logical," he said. "Ships do not have feelings and they do not form relationships with their crews." Yuna smiled and put her hand on the wall of the corridor they were standing in. The lights brightened in response to her touch. Then explained that she said Jiko could not explain it. He started helping her with the technical work while she focused on the relationship building. He was good at tracing systems and identifying what the previous teams had damaged. She was good at coaxing the ship into trusting them enough to let them help. They made a good team. One morning, Yuna arrived to find that the ship had done something new overnight. The main display in the command center had activated for the first time in 40 years. It showed a single symbol glowing blue against the dark screen. Yuna did not recognize the symbol, but her translator struggled with it for a moment and then offered a word. Stay. It was a question. The ship was asking if she would stay. Yuna felt her heart tighten in her chest because she understood what this meant. The Morning Star had been abandoned once before by people it had trusted. It had spent decades alone and hurting. Now it had found someone who treated it with kindness, and it was terrified of losing that. It needed to know that she was not going to leave. Yuna walked up to the display and pressed both hands against it. "I am not going anywhere," she said. "You and me are going to figure this out together, and I promise I will not abandon you." The display flickered and changed. New symbols appeared, and her translator worked overtime to interpret them. "Hurt," the ship said. "Alone for so long, and they hurt me, and I was so afraid." Yuna felt tears running down her face. "I know," she said. "I know, and I'm so sorry, but you are not alone anymore." The ship hummed around her, and the sound was almost like crying. Jiko stood behind her with all four of his hands hanging limp at his sides. He had no words for what he was witnessing. Nothing in his logical Tervasi education had prepared him for a ship expressing grief, but he could not deny what he was seeing and hearing. The Morning Star was alive in ways that defied everything he thought he knew. Yuna stayed in the command center for hours that day. She talked to the ship, and the ship talked back through symbols and feelings and small gestures. It told her about the crew it had lost, and the years of silence and the fear it felt when strangers came aboard with tools that cut and probed. It told her that it had given up hope until she came. It told her that she was the first person in 40 years who had treated it like it mattered. By the time Yuna left the ship that night, she understood something important. The Morning Star was not a project or a challenge or a way to prove herself. It was a friend, and she was going to do whatever it took to help her friend fly again. Yuna Beak wiped the grease from her hands and looked at the job assignment on her datapad with confusion written across her face. The message from Counselor Dreth was simple and direct, but it made no sense at all. She was being sent to assess the bugs, the rest, the system of the mest, but it made no sense at all. She was being sent to assess that all. She was being sent to assess that run. Morning Star for final salvage operations. Everyone on Tolvari Station knew about the Morning Star because it was famous for all the wrong reasons. The Kethray heavy cruiser had been sitting in the far docking bay for almost 40 years, and 3 different engineering teams from 3 different species had tried to restore it. All 3 teams had failed, and all 3 teams had written the same conclusion in their reports. The ship was dead, and there was nothing anyone could do to bring it back. Yuna grabbed her tool bag and made her way through the crowded corridors of the station. Tolvari Station existed at the edge of consortium space where old ships came to die. It was a massive orbital structure dedicated to breaking down vessels that had outlived their usefulness and selling the parts to anyone who would pay. Yuna had worked here for 2 years now, and she had seen hundreds of ships get torn apart, but she had never worked on anything like the Morning Star. The Kethri had been legendary shipbuilders before they joined the consortium and abandoned their old ways. Their vessels were said to be grown as much as built, and they used biological neural networks that no other species could understand. When the Kethri adopted standardized technology to fit in with the rest of the consortium, they left their old ships behind like children leaving toys they had outgrown. The Morning Star was one of those abandoned children. Yuna reached the far docking bay and stood before the massive airlock that led to the ship. The vessel was enormous, and it stretched back into the darkness of the bay like a sleeping giant. Its hull was dark gray with patterns that looked almost like veins running across the surface. She checked her environmental suit and stepped through the airlock. The inside of the ship was cold and dark and completely silent. Yuna turned on her helmet light and looked around at the entrance corridor. She could see evidence of the previous engineering teams everywhere. There were cut wires hanging from open panels and abandoned diagnostic equipment scattered on the floor. Someone had tried to force open a sealed door and left deep scratches in the metal. The previous teams had left notes in the station database, and Yuna had read them all before coming here. The Valkyrie team called the ship stubborn and said it refused to respond to any commands. The Tovasi team said the ship was broken beyond repair and recommended immediate salvage. The Hearth team used a word that translated roughly to hostile, and they had left after only 3 days. Yuna walked deeper into the ship and felt something strange beneath her feet. There was a vibration so faint that she almost missed it. She stopped and pressed her hand against the wall and felt it again. Something was still running inside the ship. Something was still alive. She made her way toward what her schematic showed as the main engineering section. The corridors were maze-like and confusing, but she had always been good at finding her way through complicated spaces. Growing up on a colony world, she had spent her childhood crawling through broken agricultural machines and figuring out how they worked. Ships were just bigger machines with more complicated problems. The engineering section was a disaster. Previous teams had torn out panels and disconnected systems and left everything in chaos. Yuna could see where they had tried to force the ship to respond by bypassing its natural control pathways. They had treated the Morning Star like a puzzle to be solved by brute force. She set down her tool bag and looked around at the mess. This was going to take time. She found a relatively clear spot and sat down on the cold deck. According to her research, Kethri ships had something called a resonance core at their center. It was a biological processing unit that formed bonds with the crew over time. The ship and its crew were supposed to work together as partners rather than as machine and operators. When the Kethri abandoned their old technology, their ships lost the crews they had bonded with. The Morning Star had been alone for 40 years. Yuna started talking out loud because she had always talked to machines while she worked on them. She told the ship about her day and about the annoying message from Counselor Dreth and about the bad food in the station cafeteria. She did not expect the ship to answer. She just talked because it felt right. She spent the next several hours examining the engineering section and making notes about what she found. The damage from previous teams was extensive, but it was mostly surface level. They had disconnected systems, but they had not destroyed them. The core of the ship remained intact. As she worked, she noticed something odd. A light panel near her workspace flickered on for just a moment and then went dark again. She paused and looked at it. The panel flickered again. Yuna moved closer and examined the panel. It was not connected to any of the systems that previous teams had tried to activate. It seemed to be responding to something else entirely. She reached out and touched the panel. It was warm. That made no sense because the ship had no active heating systems, and the temperature in here was barely above freezing. She pressed her palm flat against the panel and felt the warmth spread beneath her hand. The light flickered again, and this time it stayed. Yuna held her breath. Another light came on nearby, and then a soft hum began to fill the air around her. She looked down at her hand and saw that the panel beneath it was glowing with a gentle blue light. The ship was responding to her. Not to her commands or her diagnostic equipment or her technical expertise. It was responding to her presence, to her touch, to the fact that she had sat here for hours talking to it like it was a living thing that deserved attention and care. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes, and she did not know why. Maybe it was because she understood what it felt like to be abandoned and forgotten. Maybe it was because she could feel the loneliness that had filled this ship for 40 years. Maybe it was because she had finally found something that needed her as much as she needed something to care about. She kept her hand on the panel and whispered words that felt right in the moment. "I see you," she said. "I know you are still in there, and I am not going to give up on you." The ship hummed in response. It was not words. It was not communication in any normal sense. But Yuna understood it anyway. The morning star had been waiting. It had been waiting for someone who would not treat it as a problem to be solved. It had been waiting for someone who would see it as something worth saving. It had been waiting for someone who would stay. Yuna smiled and made a decision. She was not going to write a salvage report. She was going to bring this ship back to life, and nothing was going to stop her.